Wait, what? This is juicy. This is gossip. This is drama, and I am here for it. I am exhausted. Hello friends, and welcome to my channel. Today we are doing a reading vlog that I literally cannot believe we're even kicking off right now. I have been talking about starting a certain book series for a very long time, and I keep putting it off because I, quite frankly, am very intimidated. We're just gonna kind of peel off the band-aid because I know that once I started, I'm going to be obsessed, or at least aware. And I feel like that's better than just kind of sitting in this like thinking I might like it, but like also being very intimidated by it when I own almost the whole series. Anyways, we are going to be reading a certain series, none other than Magnolia Parks. I got maybe like 30 pages into this a couple months ago, and I was not in a romance or like contemporary mood. Like I was so deep into fantasy at the time that I just immediately was like, not now. So we are finally circling back almost, but also I don't really count it because it was so stinking long ago that I don't remember a single thing about the writing style or plot. So we're gonna restart from the get-go. I do want to quickly mention the whole cover situation. If you are interested in getting your hands on the original cover, might I recommend Blackwell's. When Jessica Hastings announced that these were being traditionally published, I decided I was going to go ahead and get them because I preferred the old covers, like just about all of us did. Unfortunately, all the licensing issues and things, I wish that didn't happen because apparently we all like these better. Anyways, because I know that so many people do like the original covers better, I wanted to just like kind of give a little segue. If you are interested in getting a hold of the original cover, the closest that you can get without spending $1 million on a used indie set is you can still order the original covers in the UK editions, which I personally did. I ordered mine from Blackwell's. Well, technically I ordered the first 3 on eBay when I found them from a Canadian seller, which is like kind of a whole thing. But you can currently reliably get them from Blackwell's, which I fully recommend if you ever want any form of a UK copy. They have free shipping to the US. They're like Book Depository, but in existence currently, RIP Book Depository. Anyways, the differences between the two editions, the UK covers are going to be taller. They also, obviously, if you ever see somebody trying to sell an Orion copy for like $1 million, like 40 bucks a copy, absolutely not. Do not, no. They're like 15 bucks at most. The margins on these UK copies are huge. They're very large. As far as my intentions for this spoiler situation in this vlog, my current goal is to keep this spoiler free. While I do feel like a lot of people have already read it and would enjoy seeing the spoiler section, is because I love watching spoiler section vlogs. If there's anybody else who's super intimidated by a book as popular as this one like me, I feel like it would be helpful to, you know, see somebody actually read it. So that's kind of the plan that we're going with. We'll see how everything goes. Wish me luck. Hopefully I won't need it. It's currently like 11:28 p.m., which means I definitely need to be getting ready for bed. However, we're going to talk about Magnolia Parks for just a second because I'm a literal 16 pages in so far. I'm having a great time, and I think it's partially because I am going into the intention of this with like kind of sort of annotating, meaning that I'm just highlighting lines. I'm not actually tabbing. I'm not putting any pressure on it. I'm not writing anything. However, A, because I am trying to read this physically, but B, because the writing style in this very much so just grabs your attention. The way that Jessica Hastings words things is very complex, and the fact that like she doesn't just say it, there's always some weird approach that she takes to verbalizing what she's actually trying to say. And not that she's like beating around the bush, but she's just wording it differently and making your brain think through what she's actually saying just a little bit, and it's grabbing your attention. Your girl needs to be grabbed. I'm gonna read you a quote from the literal page 1, discussing BJ Valentine. She says, "He being BJ Valentine, my first ... everything really. Love, time, heartbreak. He's the boy with the golden hair and the golden eyes, even though his hair is brown and his eyes are green. The most beautiful boy in all of London, they say, and I probably agree. On his good days. But why am I explaining him to you? You already know who he is. The fact that he has brown hair and green eyes, he's got golden hair and golden eyes because he is BJ Valentine. Yeah, that's happening. I know everything about these boys of mine. Girl. We're on page 2. When people compare this to Gossip Girl, that's what they're talking about. BJ's head pulls back, surprised. Do you want to go outside? Like, only if I can come, because, like, I would like a front row ticket, thank you. And I just am having a good time. Okay. I just didn't think that I would really be into this particular style of book. Like, I watched Gossip Girl. It was fun. When I think back to it, I'm like, yeah, Gossip Girl, toxic. But now I'm like, makes this so interesting is that it's told from a first person perspective. You're really figuring out the rationale behind why they're doing these absolutely stupid things. Obviously the writing style, because it all kind of comes back to how she's writing exactly what's happening, because ultimately there's not a lot of very specific things that's happening. Like, they're kind of hanging out, they're going to a party, they're kind of sitting around chit-chatting, they're doing whatever. There's not any like very heavy plot that's happening. However, it doesn't really matter because you're getting so much time inside their brains and you really feel like you really know these characters. So while they are doing absolutely terrible things to each other, you're understanding it, and it's interesting. The writing style itself, it is very consumable. Like, it's not very dense necessarily. It's not anything that's necessarily hard to read. However, the way that she is wording things and the particular things that she's choosing to say and the way that she's choosing to say them scratches my brain in just a way that it has never been scratched before, and I just have to stop and take a moment and just savor every single little line. I've not had very much like that ever really before. Like, I feel like every time I sit down to read it, I want to just sit down and read the whole freaking thing, but I can't do it because I just have to stop and process what the heck she just said. So I sat down to edit the clips before this one where I was in my kitchen and literally just reacting to the very first words. First of all, the audio on that, terrible, but I'm leaving it. The fact that I was reacting so early on, so viscerally to the writing style is very indicative of how the rest of this book has gone for me so far. Like, that has just continued to go on, and I just feel like my brain is just not necessarily scrambled because I fully understand what I'm reading, and it's interesting to me for my brain to be pushed in such a way in which I do fully understand the plot and like everything that's happening. As someone who's primarily a fantasy reader, it's so interesting to read a book in which, like, I understand it, it's not necessarily hard. I'm not trying to learn all of these political systems, fantasy things, but my brain is still just having to chew and figure out what the heck is even in my mouth because things are just happening left and right. Anyways, that's all. I think I'm gonna sit down tonight. I did get the Kindle edition. I really had full intentions to fully annotate this book as I went through it. However, as I was reading through lines, I wanted to let things hit as they hit versus being like, oh, I should stop and annotate, that kind of pacing. So I did get the Kindle edition, and I am highlighting like an absolute crazy person. I'm having the best time. So many of these lines are so deeply hitting for me. Where did my necklace go? I was wearing a necklace earlier. I'm gonna have to find that. Anyways, things are definitely happening, but I don't know. As someone who generally likes a lot of plot going on too, this book doesn't have that, but I don't really care because I feel very deeply connected to these characters. So while I don't necessarily like them at all, they're doing some very dumb things that I do not like at all, I like the book. So that's that on that. I will check in with you when I have finished this book. I think I'm gonna be a whole different person when I finish this book. Wow. Just wow. I have finished. That's my formal review. Y'all, I don't know what just happened to me. This book, It's the most painful poetry I've ever read. I am just absolutely shocked by everything about this book. So I'm gonna attempt to break this book down into a couple chunks in order to even remotely summarize anything about this book in terms of a review, not like full summary. Again, this video is spoiler free and will continue to be spoiler free. Um, what just happened? This is the most painful poetry I've ever read. So let's start there. Prose. What? The writing style that Jessa Hastings has in this particular book, at least, is just insane to me. The way that she says things, but then goes back and finds a different way to word things is just so interesting, and it just really scritches my brain, let me tell ya. I'll put the official number here for how many highlights I have in this book. I cannot believe the number of lines. Just the number of lines that I either resonated with me, I either thought that was just so interesting in my brain, that were just everything to me. I'm having a hard time putting into words exactly. The writing style of this book, if you've read it, you know. If you haven't read it, just know that there is a lot of imagery that she works into it. There's a whole ton of similes, metaphors, hyperboles, literally every literary tool that you can think of is in this book. It is not straightforward in the terms of how it is written, which I think works really well with the storyline. So let's talk about the storyline for a second. This book ultimately follows BJ and Magnolia as they kind of navigate their relationship following some events that have occurred. The plot in and of itself is more or less non-existent, except for the fact that there was an event that they are trying to figure out what their relationship is going to look like now and moving forward. So it's very cyclical. I'm gonna read you the back of the book because I feel like this is a very good description of the plot, because obviously it would be. How many loves do you get in a lifetime? She is a beautiful, self-involved, and mildly neurotic London socialite. He is Britain's most photographed bad boy who broke her heart. But Magnolia Parks and BJ Valentine are meant to be, aren't they? But very much so encapsulates this book in terms of like they're meant to be, because they've experienced all of these really big life moments together. They've essentially raised each other, but they're meant to be, right? But then they go and do something that completely changes the trajectory of where the relationship is going, where it should be, what is happening. So Magnolia and BJ are part of a friend group that they call the Full Box Set. They all kind of run in the same social circles in London. They all went to boarding school together. So in the absence of their parents and, general family, because they were at boarding school, they became each other's family. And in a sense, they were a bunch of kids raising each other and going through life together and figuring out how to do life. There is that found family element, but it's taken to the umpteenth degree, because not only did they grow up together, but they were everything for each other in all cases. So you have Magnolia in this group, but there's a couple other characters. You've got BJ, you've got Henry and Christian, and then the group kind of expands to include Jonah and Julian, and then you also do have Daisy Haites, which we'll get to here in a second, and then Magnolia's sister Bridget, and then you also have a character Tom. So you've got this core group of characters, and this book just follows the relationships of all these people. They have seen each other go through all of these events, whether that is things with their families, things with themselves, all of the relationship, like romance kind of first, and like literally everything these characters have been through thick and thin together. And now that there has been some conflict, it's kind of a will they, won't they, in terms of how they will continue to involve each other in both of their lives respectively. And they're going about trying to get each other to care about each other in such a messed up way. They continually just go back and forth without ever actually just breaking down and telling the other person how they really feel, and it just makes you want to throttle them. But you are invested. I don't necessarily really like BJ, and I kind of don't like Magnolia either. Traditionally in fiction, you are kind of mentally trained, if you will, to like the characters that you're reading about, right? Like, why else would you really like them? Traditionally, we're not talking like any sort of weird, like, I know in literary fiction there are some interesting sidetracks, like, and you have like the unreliable narrator situation, but excluding all of that, generally, whenever you read a book, you are supposed to be rooting for these characters, right? And you generally like them. And if you don't like them, it generally kind of tanks your rating for a book. So traditionally you like the characters, but in this book, personally, I know a lot of people do like both of the characters, and I know some people that like one character or the other. I personally like neither of them. However, the whole time that they were doing these things, I was like, no, why are you doing that? I was so invested. But then the writing style would come back and kick you back in and get you very emotionally attached to these characters, because you're getting the saddest poetry that's ever been written from a person's perspective about their relationship with someone. And then they come back and like do something that they're not supposed to be doing. And it's just so like, ugh, but it's perfect. Yeah, whenever somebody describes this book as Gossip Girl, toxic, like, ugh, that's what you're getting out of it. That's perfection. You're getting, do I like these characters? Oh, but I definitely do. But what are they doing? Why are they doing that? No, you fully understand, and you are getting both of their perspectives, but you're getting both of their perspectives from the form of why they're doing what they're doing. So you definitely know why, what's going on. It's not just like, oh, I did this because, and you're so fully convinced for both of the characters' motivations for what they're doing that you can't, I mean, you're going to be mad at them, but you can't like hate them, and you can't really fault them either. And it's just so complex. That's how I feel about this book. It's complex. They're just kind of chilling around the London social scene. They basically have a butt ton of money and nobody knows what to do with it other than spend it, and party around and like hang out and chill and have fun and go shopping. It's kind of fun to read about. Magnolia is very, she's into her shopping and she's into her fashion. There is a lot of very descriptive detail for what people are wearing and what brands are wearing. If you're a very visual person, you will either really like or really won't like, because you'll either have to go back and track and like fully visualize what's happening, or you'll appreciate that you can visualize what's happening. I was kind of torn between the two equally, which I think is part of why I'm giving this book a 4-star versus a 5. However, I've never read a book like this, and I'm just so shocked, honestly, and I get why all the girlies really like this book. Something that I was surprised about, which I haven't necessarily heard very commonly talked about, other than I went back and watched Rachel at Ravenhaired Reader, her vlog for reading this, and she did definitely go into all of the trigger and content warnings. I wasn't necessarily prepared for there to be so much like drug and substance abuse. I didn't do my due diligence whatsoever, so I was surprised by it. And if any of these things are going to not be good for you, take care of yourself. Anyways, it's unlike anything that I've ever read. I'd say maybe 80% of that is because of the writing style. The other 20% is genuinely the plot, and it's just a giant character study between these two very, very flawed, but completely understandable and completely rational once you are in their heads book. I forgot the wording that I was going there with. Characters. There we go. This is definitely going to be a book for some people, and it's going to be a book really not for some people. I feel like kind of in the middle of the boat. Like I'm just so mind blown by the fact that this book even exists, to be honest with you, and I just had a very interesting time. I don't know what else to say. What I am able to say is that I did start Daisy Haites, and let me tell you, I think I'm a Daisy Haites girly. I know I'm definitely Daisy Haites girly. These events, there's a side character, Daisy Haites, book 2 of the series, which is technically Daisy Haites 1. You get to see the story from her perspective, and then you can backtrack. Technically book 3 in this series is Magnolia Parks 2. So where we're left off in this book with these characters' point of views, we'll pick back up in technically book 3 of the series, which is technically Magnolia Parks 2, The Long Way Home? No, The Great Undoing. No, that's Daisy Haites. What's the second? Is it The Long Way Home? No. Yeah, it is. Anyways, something else. The way that this book ended, I saw it from a million miles away. And I still was shocked whenever I actually got to that point. The fact that I did put 2 and 2 together did not detract from the ending for me. The emotional side was still very much there. It's kind of like it's 100% like watching a train wreck. That's definitely what the ending of this book gave. To give you some context, I started this vlog at the beginning of the week. It's now Sunday. I have spent the entire week basically just diving into this book. And when I tell you that I felt like I was reading this slowly. I read the first 30, I think 6% fairly slowly, and then the last just a little bit over 60% I did binge the rest of that all in one night, and I just was so drained emotionally in a maybe not good way, but like I couldn't read anything else. And I did start to read this, but then I kind of just had to take a break and just process everything that had just happened to me, and then everything that had just been done to me, because it was just so emotionally there. And for me, as somebody who's read a lot of books, I feel like this year, in terms of a lot of faster paced things, I don't feel like I've really read anything this year so far that has kind of forced me to slow down and savor and process the words on paper. And let me tell you, anyways, so I have started Daisy Haites officially. You're getting a lot of her family and her environment. Daisy is the sister slash ward, almost ex-ward. Basically, she has an older brother that I think is 10 years older than her. Both of their parents passed away, and so her brother at 18 basically took charge and became the guardian of Daisy. And so now Daisy is 20, her older brother is 30. Julian, I am obsessed. I am absolutely obsessed. I think that it's so interesting to me getting to see a story here that completely just ripped you apart. There's one main character that has all these connections to all these other people, and she kind of rules the roost. She has everyone wrapped around her finger. You're getting to see from a character that kind of had to deal with some of the negative effects of that, as well as the negative effects of her own life separately. So you're getting to see kind of her upbringing and her family. This kind of giving a little bit of mafia because her older brother, they call him a gang lord jokingly. He basically is the leader of this crime, we'll call it a syndicate. Technically, he is an arms dealer officially. Unofficially, he's doing some things that let's say less than legal. However, he does have a front for it, so like it all kind of works out. But you're getting to see the inner workings of a crime family, which is definitely giving mafia, and it's very unexpected. And I think that's partially why I'm liking it so much, because I'm just like, wait, what? This is juicy. This is gossip. This is drama, and I am here for it. You're getting to see all the people behind the scenes in this gang, we'll call it, crime syndicate, however they freaking want to word it. Her older brother, all of his friends, all of his employees, basically her bodyguard, all of these other people that are supposed to be around her. We'll just say that there are definite life and death situations in which not only happen actively, but that she is reacting to in the past. You're getting to see her parents and kind of how growing up with her older brother being her only guardian affected her. And it's wild. And it's so funny to me because at the same time, Daisy is the younger sister slash second in line for the crime lord, gang lord throne. And at the same time, all she wants to do is be a domestic goddess. Like, Girly Pop is, I think it's the second chapter, technically chapter 3, but the second chapter from her perspective kicks off with her talking all about how much she likes doing laundry and all about her fancy washing machines and how much she enjoys the domestic normal side of life, because her whole life she has had to be in this bubble because her brother is very much so wrapped up in very dangerous things with very dangerous people who have attempted to take her out as well. And because of all that, all she wants to do is just like hang out and do laundry. One of her biggest rules, again, says on the back of the book, very chapter 1, the opening line is quite literally, no guns at the dinner table. That's my one rule. Call me old-fashioned, I don't know. It's just what I've always said to the boys. I don't care about phones. I don't care if they're texting. I don't care if they're wearing a hat at the table. I just don't want guns while I'm serving them a brisket I slow cooked for 9.5 fucking hours. And it's fantastic. Yeah. The other thing, Daisy is so sassy. She's so sassy, and she has so many side comments, and I think her brain and the way that the footnotes are done, which we'll talk about in a second, it very much so speaks to how my brain works and how some of like the inner comments in my mind, I feel like if I were to have a story with my point of view, it would be structured exactly like this. So what will happen is that she'll say something, and then there will be a footnote. This is the first page. You've got your intro, and there's actually a big chunk of a footnote here. She'll talk about their total animals when it comes to food, these lost boys of mine. So she then goes in to explain who the lost boys are, which she'll say 7 lost boys in total, which I'll listen. I have noticed there are a couple typos in these books, and I think it's interesting. Again, this was originally published, so I'm curious like what the editing process was like. There was like a couple random periods missing in the Kindle version, including, which I'll listen below for your ease of reference. But it's not a lot. It's kind of like here and there. Enough to notice, but not enough to turn me off by any means. The very beginning intro will give you more descriptions, and it's kind of like info dumpy in a sense, but then as you get into it, it kind of kicks off the style of using these footnotes. Okay, this is on page 20. This is a completely random without context. She says, a cup of tea, the barely there hum of my washing machine. Footnote, annoying. The next line is, it's this theological concept that we were all born innately sinful and my brother loves it. Footnote, of course he does. Says it's one of his 2 get out of jail free cards. Footnote, of course he does. And it's just like random little side notes, and it's funny because how I annotate is very much so like this, like all of these random little side comments that I will write, it's like she's annotating it for me in a sense, like she's having all of these same thoughts that I would have, like the same style of thoughts. She's saying it for me so I don't have to. It's just interesting. I do want to talk about Julian for just a second because I am quite literally obsessed. Homie J, actually, bad pun. It's mentioned very specifically that he is not someone who has commitment issues, but he is not in a relationship actively because he doesn't want to create another weakness or create another person who could potentially be at risk other than Daisy. So it's just interesting that that was mentioned, and I'm very curious to see where that goes and what that develops into. There's a mysterious person that Julian's texting, and I need to know who it is. I have theories. I won't mention any of them because they'll probably all be wrong and also be spoilers. So I'm going to use the excuse of saying lack of spoilers as my excuse for not making myself look like an idiot later. I'm somewhere around the 100-page mark, and it's so interesting because it is very similar to Magnolia Parks in terms of there's this weird will they won't they kind of style relationship. However, it's very different. That's all I'll say. Anyways, I'll leave it off there. I have literally been giving this update for 34 minutes now, and I could continue to talk about it, and the end. Wow. Hello friends, happy Monday. Update for you all. I read exactly like 2 chapters last night before I was just done and fell asleep. I feel like I am exhausted. And I don't think I wanted to admit it beforehand, but I think I finally can, because this series takes place over a certain short period of time and there are very few things that actually happen, but you're following the different perspectives. That is so interesting. However, you are following the same events and they're all very emotionally charged events. And I was kind of thinking that in this vlog, I could read all potentially 5 books and just kind of separate it out. There's going to be absolutely no way because I feel like I need a break. I feel like I have been put through not only the emotional ringer, but just like I'm ready for something else. I think we'll see how I actually feel when I actually finish the book. But at this point, I'm exhausted. I'm obviously still liking it because otherwise I wouldn't be reading it, but I just feel like I have been through it. I'm somewhere in the middle of chapter 26. I don't quite remember where, but that starts at 148. So I'm a fair chunk of the way into this book, but definitely not anywhere close to being done anytime soon. So honestly, this vlog, I was initially planning on reading the full. I knew it was going to take me some time to read all 5 books, but I wanted this vlog to be all 5 books. But at this point, I'm like, girl, I'm exhausted. I feel like I need a break. This book, I do like it a lot. It is good. This series, I like it a lot and it is good. However, reading so many books about the same things that are happening that's giving you the same vibe, like that page count is kind of a lot at once. So I think I might have a better experience if I choose to break up these books a little bit and read some other things in between here and there and be able to come back to the same world and these same characters that are going through these similar things. So I think that might be the approach that I take, but I feel like exhausting is the best word. Like it's a good kind of exhausting because I feel like I'm so invested in it that it's pulling a lot out of me and I'm very much so giving it a lot of energy. And so that definitely to me tells me that I'm obsessed, but I do feel kind of similarly. I definitely prefer Red Rising, so don't get this. This is definitely a 4-star series. That's a 6 million star series. However, the pacing of that book combined with the emotional turmoil that it just like chokeholds out of you, that definitely you want to savor it a bit more, and it's not something that you just want to read all 3 books in a week. I'm getting same but different, but like same vibes here. So all of that to say, I am being put through it. However, I am enjoying being put through it, but I'm definitely being put through it. So there's a weird kind of dichotomy around this book that I'm currently experiencing. The writing style is very approachable, but it's not necessarily very bingeable. And I think that's what I set out to do, whereas this book series doesn't really complement that style of reading. So what I think I might do, finish this book, put a little bit of a pause on this series, read some other things, and come back to this in a couple of weeks. That way I've had some time to process, and then I can come back to it with refreshed eyes. I'm definitely someone who generally prefers to binge series, so I feel like I can be in that world, I can stay in that world, I'm not going to forget all of the things in that world, and I can just kind of experience that all together, right? I don't think that's the approach that is best for this particular series. If I were to recommend a specific circumstance that would be best timing to read this, it's when you're wanting to savor something and when you're wanting something a little bit more like your brain has to really chew on it. I don't necessarily think about it a whole time when I'm not reading it, but while I'm reading it, I am thinking through all of the, not only words, but all of the specific actions that are happening in these books, because they're very small actions. It's just like this person did this and this person did this, as opposed to this is happening to this person. And so they're very, I don't know, it's just a different style. So I feel like if you're in the middle of reading a whole bunch of books that feel very much the same, might I point you this direction. Something else that is interesting about this series is that it's very much so never just one relationship that you're looking at. You're always looking at these relationships in the scope of other relationships also being involved. And I think that in romance specifically, unless it's a love triangle, there's generally one very specific love interest, and then there are friends. But it's very clear, like, this is a friendship type of love and this is a romantic type of love. This series is really kind of evaluating the different levels of that. You obviously have all of these characters that are currently in relationships, but then they also have all of this history with these other people that may or may not be impacting present lives. And it's just interesting to watch these characters in this span of not only current happenings, but also in the life cycle of everything that's ever happened to them, because again, they have known all of these other characters for a very long time, so there is a lot of history there, and it's interesting to kind of evaluate what a current relationship looks like with respect to a prior, very deeply developed history. You're getting so much angst and tension and longing between these characters, and as someone who loves all of that, I'm having a great time. My brain's cooking, my brain's chewing on what's happening here, but it's enjoying the meal. This face is not in reference to the enjoyment of the book, but it's definitely in reference to the crap analogy that just was. So moving on. I'll check in with you when I finished. That happened. I finished it. I feel kind of conflicted in my feelings about this book, which first of all, I'm going to give it a 4 stars. Kind of an obvious given 4-star. However, I feel like it's definitely put me into a reading slump, and I don't think it's the book specifically, but I think it was specifically trying to binge this series because it is so emotionally charged and just like a lot. And the other thing is that this book takes place, like we've talked about, at the same time as Magnolia Parks, and because you are getting different characters' perspectives who were very removed from these events, you are getting a little bit of crossover. It's not enough to feel like you're reading the same book twice, but it is a little bit to where if you're already kind of struggling with the pacing of this book, which isn't necessarily true either. See, I'm conflicted. I feel like I would have been much better off if I would have read Magnolia Parks and then let this simmer a little bit and then come back in with Daisy Haites. However, I'm a Daisy Haites girly. As far as the actual structure of this book, I also think that it would have been helpful to have read Magnolia Parks, wait a little bit, and then go into this book and then gone into book 3, as opposed to reading the first 2 books, taking a break, and then reading book 3 and 4. And then eventually 5, and however else that goes on in the future, because the way that this book ends really sets you up to go back into this one in a way that I thought was really cool and interesting. Like, I wasn't really sure if it was just going to be a full cliffhanger and we were just going to move on, but there actually are ties that make it go. I'm so very curious where the rest of the series goes and where the characters that we follow, how that continues to change. There was a lot more about Julian in this book, which I wasn't really anticipating, but I have so many questions and I need to see his story move on. You also do get to see a little bit more of BJ's perspective. I like him a little bit more after reading this book, which I wasn't expecting. But I think the biggest takeaway from this series for me is how much so Jessa Hastings creates characters that you can like one second and hate one second. And the more that you read, the more that your opinions continue to change and develop. I started off not liking BJ. I kind of like him now. I started off liking Magnolia. I didn't like her. I liked her again. I really disliked her. Daisy Haites, you meet her, you do not like her. I like her again. Christian, didn't really like him. I like him again. But I know that once I go back to Magnolia Parks, I'm gonna hate him again. But I'm just really proud of how these characters really stood up for themselves in this book. Magnolia Parks, it was just left a hot mess that we're gonna go back to, and I cannot wait to go back to it. Especially after reading the end of this, there were so many emotions and so many complexities to these characters that I feel like I just need a minute to process it. And I think that that is incredible writing style, because I don't read as many books as some people do, but I definitely read more than the average person. And I feel like sometimes that does a disservice to the books because I'm always just reading, finishing, and going on to the next. A book like this, it's a mixture of the pacing and the actual topic, but ultimately I feel like I'm really chewing on this book still. I don't feel like I'm just stopping, moving on, going to the next book. And I think that as someone who, again, does read more than the average person, that's a really fantastic quality to have. So I definitely see why this book series is so popular. I am very excited to get into the next half of the series after I take a little bit of a break. I go read some fan row, I go read some brain candy, and I come back to the misery that is this series. Yeah, but anyways, if you haven't read the series, I definitely would recommend it, at least just to kind of get an idea of what the writing style is like, because it definitely is so unique to this author in particular. I've personally, if you've read anything else like that, leave comments down below, but I've personally not read anything like this, so maybe it's something I expand my reading taste towards around knowledge of books. I don't know. It's a unique book series with characters that are so complex and layered, and your personal interaction with these characters is very complex and layered, and I think that that is just really, it's cool. So all in all, I am so stinking glad that I have finally finished this series that I have been staring at on my bookshelves. Finish the series. I did not at all. Not at all. I feel like it's gonna take me forever to finish this series. However, I have finished the first 2 installments, the first book in each technically like main character's point of view, so that feels like a good point for me to kind of know what the series is about. At least from the get-go, I feel like things are gonna completely change. So maybe we come back and do a part 2. Maybe in August we come back. I feel like August would be a good time to read these. So if you're looking for a sign to pick up the books on your TBR that were very intimidating to you, like these were to me, I was so intimidated, but I'm glad that I finally I just dipped my toe in the water and I figured out what it was about, and I liked it a lot. And I feel like it kind of opened my brain to some things that I didn't really think that I would like, but then also it was just, I don't know what just happened to me, but it definitely happened, and I'm not mad at it in any capacity. So anyways, first of all, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've made it this far, go ahead and leave, I like both of these books are red, go ahead and leave a red heart emoji down below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, leave a comment down below for what book series are intimidating to you, because this was it for me for a really long time, and now I feel like, I don't know, I feel invigorated, honestly. I feel like I'm ready to go just read a whole bunch of other things, just that way I can come back to the rest of the series and like come back with different eyes and just revisit it at a different time. I feel like these are the kind of books that you definitely can reread and you're gonna pick different things out of, and things are just gonna hit you differently. So I'm thinking that waiting a little bit and then coming back to this world is gonna be the move for me, but I'm very glad that I got to them this week. I'm glad that they are finally off my TBR. I know what the hype is about, and I definitely see the hype. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you in the next one.